During the cafe, if you have questions, please enter them into the chat. And after Rob's presentation, we will ask those questions and a few of them that have come in from our Facebook group. For the last year plus, this community has been really engaged with trying to stay safe and healthy. And a lot of the cultural opportunities that make Port Townsend and Jefferson County such a marvelous place have been shuttered for that long by the national and state and local guidance. So many of our businesses have consolidated or closed. And now that vaccinations in Jefferson and Clallam are over 50%, we're looking at being one of the safer communities in the state. And all of us are looking for those cultural outings now that are safe and healthy, whether for the short term or longer term. And all of those visitors who are coming by and taking all of our material on such a regular basis that I have to call for more, they're looking for the same thing. What can I do here? What's going on? When I get off the hiking trail, where can I go? What can I do? And I know I'm all excited, and all of you are too, to learn how we can fill that shared community creative void that was created by the pandemic. And so with that, to answer that question, I am going to turn this meeting over to the Executive Director of Centrum, Rob Birman. Rob.
Thank you, Arlene. It's great to see everybody. Wonderful to reconnect with people that I haven't seen in some time. I enjoyed serving as the past president of the Chamber of Commerce for 2 or 3 years. Loved that board of directors and the luncheons that we used to have on a regular basis. I'm sure we'll get back to that. I made this presentation at the Noon Rotary Club a few weeks ago, and this is an expanded version of that. So I apologize if any of you have seen some of it, but there is new information here. So I will share my screen and I'll launch right into it. And again, please think of questions and we'll talk about those at the end of the presentation. So as many of you know, Centrum was founded in 1974 in tandem with the creation of Fort Worden State Park. Interestingly, it was 3 state agencies that came together to both create Fort Worden State Park and Centrum at the same time to be the anchor tenant. It was the Park Commission, the State Arts Commission, and the Superintendent for Public Instruction in Olympia. What I'm going to talk about today is sort of the journey that Centrum has been on since 1974 and some of the growth that we've had, at least in the 8.5 years that I've been here. I arrived here at Centrum in 2013, and we've been on a fairly steady pace of growth and advancement since that time. This is a quick snapshot if we look back to the early 90s in the sort of the regular rate of growth in our workshops, which is the main thing that Centrum does. The main product that we offer is week-long residential workshops in the arts. And we'll go through some of that variety in the presentation. But you can see here that we've built our workshop revenue from $500,000 in '94 to almost $1.2 million before the pandemic. That blue bar includes the cost of tuition, room, and food to come here to be in residence at Centrum at Fort Worden State Park. The yellow bars are ticket sales through the years, and interestingly, those have been very stable. We have a different number of events every year, and we have varying ticket prices for different events. But I think what fascinates me about the ticket sales being level is that we literally have a ceiling on those venues. It's mainly the Wheeler Theater and the McCurdy Pavilion. So if we look over here at 2020 at the very end of the scale, what we see is a 98% reduction in our workshop revenue because of the pandemic, and we'll talk more about that, and a 90% reduction in ticket revenue, much like all the businesses in Port Townsend and Jefferson County. But we'll go through some of the other influences on that as we talk through the presentation. I happen to come from a long history of running nonprofit organizations all over the country before I landed here in Port Townsend. And one of the things that I'm a big believer in is the value of endowments. I have found in every community that I've worked that that's not a universally held affection. Some donors aren't big believers in setting money aside for the future. They want their benefit and their and their gifts to come to fruition immediately. And I can respect that on one level. But one of my personal charges at Centrum that I've identified mainly for me is to leave a legacy here of building permanence for Centrum. I came here in 2013. Centrum was fairly deeply in debt. We had $400,000 in debt, and we had 2 credit cards fully maxed out. This was the end of the recession, of course, 2013. And this predicament was fairly common in most nonprofits at that time because of coming through that recession from 2008 to 2013. But we've done a really radical turnaround of the organization. And I want to say also, one of the reasons I came to Port Townsend is because I am such a believer in the idea of the Fort Worden Public Development Authority. The idea of blending public and private dollars to reanimate Fort Worden State Park is something I continue to believe extremely strongly in. And the PDA's had a lot of growth since 2014 when they were created. And obviously they've had some challenges, but I'm confident that it'll rebound, and Centrum will be part of that solution. And we'll talk more about that at the end of the presentation. In the case of Centrum, we are committed to leave the endowment funds untouched until they get to at least $1 million or more. And to be honest with you, an $850,000 endowment really isn't very meaningful for a $4 million nonprofit organization. So the rule of thumb that I follow is you really want your endowment to be a 3-to-1 ratio to your annual budget. So to have a truly impactful endowment, Centrum would need something in the range of $12 million. But again, that's just a rule of thumb. When I speak to audiences, they love to look at these maps. So this is a map of the people that came through our workshops in 2019, the last year that we had a full season. And you can see that we have people from 17 different countries, from almost all 50 states, and 77% of the counties in Washington. It's pretty phenomenal. And when we realized that we could put all of this information directly into Google Maps, we started doing that a number of years ago so that we could get a true, literal representation of where our audience comes from. In terms of ticket sales, it's also fairly impressive. This is the map for ticket sales in 2019. Now that, I believe, is mainly a reflection of the fact that Port Townsend and Jefferson County is such a tourist destination. I don't believe people are coming to Port Townsend just to come to Centrum, but we benefit tremendously by being at this park and having such a wide range of tourists every summer. So we're pretty pleased with that reach that we have. And the impact of these maps is that the donor base at Centrum is really global. And I know Richard Tucker is on this call and other nonprofit leaders. I'm really proud of the fact that at Centrum, 49% of our fundraising comes from outside of Jefferson County. So that means to me that we're not competing in and among all the other nonprofits that are here. Our audience base is our donor base. So while we have strong support locally, we also have almost half of our support coming from outside Jefferson County. If we look at the fiscal performance of Centrum, this chart is in the opposite direction from the earlier ones. You can see that, we had some deficit issues early on, not unrealistic coming out of the recession, but we've been in the black very steadily. And what's fascinating and fairly fortunate for us is that we became very disciplined. You can see in the last year before the pandemic, we were running a budget of about $3.7 million. We were very lucky because we set out intentionally to build a cash reserve at Centrum. We had no idea, of course, that the pandemic would hit right there. But you can see the 2 years leading up to the pandemic, we were very intentionally trying to build a cash reserve. Now, what we wanted at Centrum was a bank account with at least 3 months of liquidity in it as a rainy day fund, basically. But boy, was that extremely valuable when the pandemic hit. And again, this was not predicted, but it's extremely fortunate that we were on the ball. And you can see that last year we ran a 1% surplus. And obviously we had a reduction of about 50% in terms of our scale and operations, which is also understandable. But thanks to PPP funding, we were still able to stay in the black even last year. So that's a good thing for this community and for the organization. In addition to programming, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, we're also extremely proud of our commitment to build our balance sheet. It's not something that's very sexy, but business people understand the value of building your balance sheet. And you can see over these years from 2015 to now, we've made some significant investments in infrastructure and capital improvements at Centrum. These do not show up on those fiscal results because we amortize these costs over many years. But we've put almost $1 million of investment into capital projects as we've grown in terms of fiscal strength and stability at Centrum. I put this one in yellow, the LED project that we ran in 2019, because in addition to upgrading the theaters and the concert experience for all the visitors that we get, we also realized a 90% energy reduction in the two theaters by virtue of replacing all of the old lighting units with LED systems. So we're really happy about that. And this last item, the technology project, we'll talk about in more depth in a few minutes. It's kind of fun to look at the new programs that we've initiated since I came. We started, and this is in no particular order, we started a new program for students of migrant families that we call Voices from the Field Arts Academy. This was a partnership with the superintendent of schools in Olympia. This is a continuing program. It'll happen again this June. We're now, I think, in the 5th year of the program. It's extraordinary. That picture on the top left is one of the images from the week. We've got a stunning video about this program on our website. I would really encourage you, if you're interested to know more about it, to go look at Voices from the Field on our website and watch the video. It's entirely in the voices of the children. There's no other voice in the video, and it's very, very powerful. We love this program, and a lot of these children have never been away from home on their own in their lives. And this is the first time they get their own dorm room. It's like going to college in many ways. And these are generally kids in junior high, mainly junior high level age, but it empowers these kids to think beyond what limitations they may face today and to meet kids from all over the state that are just like them. And it's incredible. We love the program. We started a week-long chamber music workshop. This program is a little different than everything else we do at Centrum in that it's an invitation program. We go out and recruit 10 of the most promising young chamber musicians from around the country, mainly through university music programs. And we bring them here on full scholarship to study for a week with a professional string quartet and our director of chamber music, Lucinda Carver. And we started a creative aging conference in partnership with the Fry Art Museum. We were so impressed with the work the Fry has been doing with the Rose Theater in creative aging and started a dialogue with the Fry, and we now tag team with them to produce a 2-day creative aging conference in December each year. And this will be the 3rd year of that program. We started the Ukulele Workshop back in 2013. That program has been 100% sold out since the day it started. We've never advertised the program at all. So it's pretty incredible. There's high demand. The average age for that program is 70, which is unbelievable. Just like the native program, just like the migrant program, we started an exact similar program for students of native families as well. That ran for 2 years. We did 3 programs in 2 years, very successfully. And then it was determined by the constituents that the program would be better suited on native grounds. And we completely supported that decision. So that program is continuing, but it's not at Fort Worden State Park any longer. We started an emerging artist residency, which is a month-long opportunity for 6 visual artists from the Pacific Northwest to come together, to live together and to work together for a full month. We do an exhibition at the end of that month for the public. I'll show you another slide on that in a minute. And we started a Red Hot Strings program, which is early jazz, sort of the middle ground between what we now do in our jazz and our blues program. That's also very popular. We call that an intensive, which is a 4-day weekend program rather than a full 7-day program. And we also started an arts and lecture series called Communiversity. Oh, before that, this is a picture of our Artists in Residence, our EAR, the Emerging Artist Residency Program from 2020. So you can see it's multidisciplinary. We had musicians and visual artists and creators of all types. You see woodworking in the bottom right. Even during the pandemic, we're able to do artist residencies because Fort Worden is fairly isolated. Artists can work in isolation, and it's the one area of programming at Centrum we've been able to continue. The last thing in terms of new program is our new arts and lecture series, which we started last year. We only were able to have 2 events before the shutdown, but this is continuing. You may have seen Sarah Vowell the other night. Sarah Vowell on the bottom left was our guest speaker this past Monday. The gentleman to her right is a National Geographic photographer that spoke with us last month. And this program will continue. It was a partnership with Crosscut and KCTS Channel 9 in Seattle. So you may be identifying some themes here. For any nonprofit organization, partnerships are extremely valuable because they extend your dollars multifold and they cross-fertilize audiences with other organizations. So we're a big believer in that, and that's been part and parcel of a lot of what we've been doing. In terms of the Centrum donors, I find this illustration kind of helpful for people. It was helpful for my board when I put this together. Most nonprofits, when you look at the donor levels nationally, get 88% of their support from 12% of their donors. It's very common. We call this a donor pyramid, that your largest donors are the fewest donors, but dollar for dollar, they give disproportionately more than, say, a donor between $1 and $50, which would be down here at the base of the pyramid. We have far more donors at the base, but cumulatively the dollars don't add up to what one person could give if they made a $100,000 gift. At Centrum, we're sort of concentrated. Now, this isn't totally surprising because we're in a rural community of 10,000 people, but we get 88% of our support from just 8% of our donors. So as we built that cash reserve and we became intentional about expanding our base, what we're trying to do is not be so dependent on just a handful of donors at the very top end. This next slide will show you some of the trends in our giving going from 2016 to 2020. We've had roughly 600 to 700 donors in a year on average at Centrum. We've had a nice, steady, reliable donor base. You can see some of these numbers in 2018 and 2019 are accelerated because we were trying to build that cash reserve, which I talked about. But even last year in the pandemic, while we had fewer donors, we were able to raise over $1 million, which was our goal when we revised our budget because of the pandemic. So we're still benefiting from a lot of loyal support from around the world. And I think part of that is because Centrum offers something that most people can't get anywhere else. What we offer is fairly unique. And this opportunity to come and be in residence with master artists from all around the world isn't something you see at most other jazz festivals or blues festivals or writing conferences. So that generates a lot of loyalty in our support, which we're grateful for. So let's look at the pandemic for a few minutes. We all have lived through it. We're still suffering from the end of it. I'm just going to pull up a few talking points for how Centrum pivoted around that pandemic era. We were really very early in responding to the pandemic. The reason is our Creative Aging Conference in 2019 was, is that right? 2019? I guess it's 2020, was actually March 7th. That was very, very early. And if you all remember, Seattle was the epicenter back then. We had our first event cancellation as early as March 7th, which is fairly early when you look at other organizations around the country. We also very quickly went to a work from home stance for our crew and our staff. I think we were out ahead of the curve in many ways, partly because having to respond so early to the conditions in Seattle made us attuned to the national trends very, very early. We did have to reduce our workforce like most businesses in town. The consequences of that was a 40% employment reduction back in March. That's mainly layoffs of our summer production crew. We didn't know back then how long this would be with us. And we immediately put people on layoff positions so that they could benefit from unemployment and we wouldn't risk going deep into debt over this pandemic. And I'm sad to say all of those people still remain laid off today. We haven't brought a single one of those people back yet, although we'd love to do it. We still don't have the reliable vaccination percentages to start to do public events here at Fort Worden. But I'll talk about that in a few minutes as well. Of course, like so many groups, Centrum transitioned to online programming. It was the only way for us to continue to really stay relevant and offer some kind of connection to the people that we serve, who again are from all over the US, Canada, and around the world. We'll talk a little bit about that a little later. We did take a very early stance to offer all of our constituents 100% refunds. And we invited those that had registered for summer programs in 2020 to consider donating a portion of their funds to support Centrum. And about 60% of them did that. And we refunded 100% of the difference. We felt that this was critical in keeping our trust and loyalty with all of our constituents. Another thing that we did is we started a podcast network, and I'll share a slide on that in just a minute, but this has been a phenomenal way for us to stay in touch with our people. We have 5 different podcast channels now that are online, and we're getting extremely high rates of interaction through that channel. And so that'll continue in perpetuity. I'll talk about that in just a minute. And of course, the PPP funding was critical. I showed you that we had a 1% surplus last year. That's really thanks only to the PPP program. Centrum qualified for just under $250,000 in the PPP program. And we've in fact qualified this year for another second PPP loan. And our first loan was forgiven as we're a nonprofit organization, and we qualified for that forgiveness. Some of you may be aware that there's another federal stimulus program that was originally created for the Broadway organizations and movie theaters and venues around the country. Centrum does qualify to apply for this source of funding as well. However, because of our PPP funding, we are in the last priority ranking nationally for consideration. This program was supposed to open April 8th. They've had massive problems with their technology. Nobody has applied for this grant yet. The thinking is that applications will start again sometime next week. I'm personally supporting Rocky Friedman and the Rose Theater's application for shuttered venues at his request. And this is mainly geared for smaller operators who have suffered the same kind of percentage reductions that I showed you on that chart. We've had a 98% and a 90% reduction in our revenues, but we've had the benefit of contributions and PPP funding, which is why we end up being on the low priority scale, which I think is totally fair. Another thing that we did last year in response to the pandemic is we created a new permanent partnership with Madrona Mind Body Institute. If you don't know this building at Fort Worden, this is the former gymnasium at the military base, and it's a beautiful space. Madrona Mind Body has invested quite a lot in renovating this facility. You can see it has some very sizable rooms, and it's just a stunning space at Fort Worden. And our motivation to partner with Madrona was in part to make sure that they stayed at Fort Worden State Park. The pandemic was devastating to fitness and gyms and organizations that do yoga. This partnership was a way for us to make sure that Madrona stayed as part of the partnership at Fort Worden. And in return, Centrum benefits from getting access to some of this program space that we share with Madrona. We're also considering making some of these spaces, for instance, this space on the upper right, a turnkey broadcast facility so that anybody from the community could come in and do a global broadcast of a presentation of any kind. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But we're really proud to be working in partnership with Madrona, and we see this as a permanent partnership going forward. This is sort of a view of some of the new podcasts that we have online. We've had 34,000 downloads by the end of December last year. And these just continue and continue. The fifth podcast channel we have is readings from the Port Townsend Writers Conference, which has been a podcast for many, many years. And we're continuing to add to that as we go. So you can tune into those and subscribe if you're interested. We just put out a 16-page 2020 impact report last week. This is available for download on our website if you're curious about it. It's a follow-up to a companion piece we had done halfway through last year, again, as our effort to stay in contact with our constituents. Again, most of them are not local. So we found that using old mediums of print and US mail still has some value, especially during the pandemic. And it's our way of trying to be responsive and transparent about the work that we're doing. So I encourage you to look at that if you haven't seen it yet. This project is one of the most exciting outcomes of the pandemic itself. So we took a stance of security and reduction in force when the pandemic hit. And we started to experiment with translating what we do at Centrum to online formats. And what we learned from those experiments last year was that there's still a high interest in doing this. And we started to realize that if we were visionary to incorporate online participation as a permanent feature in what we do at Centrum, so what we think of as hybrid programming, where you could have a blend of in-person and online participation forevermore, even when we can return safely and gather, we have the potential to double or triple our reach around the world. People could attend from anywhere virtually and blend in the classroom setting with the people that are actually here at Fort Worden. The way we envision this is that the people that are here would have a 24/7 experience. And the people that connect online would probably be limited to maybe 5 hours a day of interaction and connection. So the price point for online would be much lower, but the access would also be less. It would be incredibly difficult to make 24/7 access online, and it wouldn't be worth it. I don't think the demand would be there. We reached out to the MJ Murdoch Charitable Trust, and we are now, we've been awarded a $182,000 grant to purchase the technology that will enable us to have multiple cameras and operators in 10 classrooms simultaneously. We're going to work with a company called Boxcast, which will allow us to broadcast live events in classes at Centrum globally. And this is just an illustration of what that might look like. In addition to the technology project, which, by the way, we're required to match on a one-to-one basis, the total cost of this project is $364,000. But it's going to enable us to essentially become a broadcaster of what we do. So we can export programs and activities at Fort Worden globally. And again, when I talked about Madrona Mind Body and maybe having a turnkey studio, we're thinking about installing some of this equipment on a permanent basis in some of the rooms at Madrona, so that anybody in the community who needs to do a broadcast of a class or a lecture could walk in and have all of the facility at the ready. So we're excited about that. In addition to the technology, we've also purchased 5 tents. We weren't sure when the vaccines would be sufficient, and we thought that in order to elevate the comfort level of our participants from around the world, it might behoove us to have the opportunity to hold some of our classes outdoors. So actually today, we have 5 tents arriving by freight from the Midwest. We're going to have 3 60 by 40 tents and 2 40 by 40 tents. We imagine these will be available for community use as well. We purchased 5 vans a number of years ago, and we make those available to nonprofit organizations if they need group transportation solutions. We haven't figured out how the tents are going to work for community use yet, but we'll figure that out. And we'll be putting one of these tents up at the Madrona Mind Body site probably next week. So if you're in the park, you can drive by and take a look at what they look like. Madrona is going to be teaching some of their classes outdoors. And whenever we can have gatherings again, we'll be using the tents as a regular opportunity to expand our classroom space. I don't envision that, however, until 2022. But we'll have the tents starting late today. So that's exciting. Just a quick word about the future of Fort Worden. The partners at Fort Worden, which are these groups here, are completely focused on solutions and trying to be a source of help. The fort's going through some growing pains. The city is in the process of identifying a new board of directors to govern the Fort Worden PDA, which I support. We've had great communications, not only with the current leadership at the PDA and the PDA Foundation, but also with the city of Port Townsend. So the partners are hopeful that coming out of this pandemic, and with the work that David Timmons has been engineering to sort of take the debt service that the PDA has and spread that over a 20-year period, and the innovative work that Aislinn Palmer and others are doing to find a new solution for hospitality services at Fort Worden, we all believe that we can rebound and have a future much like we experienced in 2019, but perhaps with a smarter engineering towards how it's going to be done. So one of the things that we're discussing, and this is just in discussion phases, but my board is very committed to this solution if it can be agreed to, is to consider sharing some of the burden of the deferred maintenance at Fort Worden State Park across a wider network of organizations, so that the whole burden doesn't rest only with the Fort Worden PDA. So I have a meeting this coming Monday with the PDA Foundation and the PDA to explore the pragmatism of whether Centrum could, in essence, co-manage part of the fort and agree in exchange for a long-term lease arrangement that we would take on the obligation to maintain and upgrade the buildings that the partners mainly use. So this map is my own map. It's not something that the PDA has generated. It's just my concept of what might be possible. The partner organizations are generally speaking in this striped area that I've outlined in the map. So the yellow buildings up here are buildings that are part of Centrum's lease. These are temporary cabins that we've been using for decades to house our faculty artists and our artists in residence. We also have the Corvidae Press building, which is our artist studios, and we have the Madrona lease now as part of the partnership that we negotiated last year. The buildings that are in red are the buildings that partners currently occupy or that partners could occupy in the future. We have the woodworking school up here on the north. We have Copper Canyon Press. We have the Port Townsend School of the Arts, which is now known as Northwind Art. The woodworking school has some space in this building as well. And then, of course, the Wheeler and the McCurdy Theater are rental spaces that Centrum uses quite a lot, and other groups in town and the high school use when needed. There are three buildings here, this building labeled number 1, the building here in the middle, and this long building here, which have just been renovated by the PDA. There's been just under $14 million invested in those three buildings. Those are the buildings that are commonly referred to as Maker Square. Maker Square really is this whole collection of spaces, but the three buildings that have been renovated are these three here that I'm showing with my mouse. The future of those buildings is not yet known, but the Centrum board and I have considered stepping forward to take on what amounts to $25 million in deferred maintenance in these buildings. If we could get a 25-year master lease and work in partnership with the PDA so that the PDA in the future could focus more squarely on accommodations and the hospitality and the groundskeeping that is also very, very time consuming and costly to maintain. The idea is that Centrum could help coordinate all of the art and culture programming at Fort Worden. This was an idea that was initiated by David Timmons, not by us, but we've responded to that request to consider this. We would probably generate a shared governance model for all the partners, the Woodworking School, Copper Canyon, Madrona, Centrum, the School of Art, and all the other partners that would be involved in this corridor. Again, we estimate that there's more than $25 million in maintenance that's needed in all of these spaces. that would be a burden that we would go out and raise so that it lessens the burden on the future PDA. And they could focus on renovating all of the houses, the dormitories, the schoolhouse, and some of the other buildings on the campus without having to be responsible for 100% of all the maintenance needs here. So this is a work in progress. David Timmons approached me about this idea in November of 2020, and we've been working on this with all the partners and with David since that time. The city's been involved as well. The foundation is now involved. So we're hoping that we can engineer a solution like this where the partners can become semi-autonomous in a co-management relationship that Centrum would share with the PDA as the biggest and largest and most capable nonprofit that's here at Fort Worden. So upcoming events for Centrum, both online and in person. We just had a concert with the Mertz Trio on Sunday this past weekend, chamber music performance. Sarah Vowell was our guest speaker this past Monday at Communiversity. Our Shoro workshop begins this weekend. That's going to be 100% online. That'll be spread over 3 different consecutive Saturdays. We have a Water World program that happens in about a month. That's for students from around Washington State. It's a partnership with the Port Townsend Marine Science Center. Regrettably, that event will be 100% online. We have a Hot Strings program, also, again, early jazz period before World War II. That'll be online. We have the Moreau Quartet in concert, which will be a virtual event, followed by a concert with the Dover Quartet. And then we have our Voices from the Field Arts Academy for students of migrant families in June, in partnership with the superintendent of schools. That also will be online. It's not yet safe for travel and gathering in the dorms. Fiddle Tunes is the week of July 4th. That will be online only. We have our Writers Conference the following week. That'll be online only. And then these last 2 events, our Jazz Workshop and our Blues Workshop, which is the end of July and the start of August, will be mainly online, but we are planning to do 1 live concert for each week outdoors at the McCurdy Pavilion. We think by the end of July and the early period of August, confidence in gathering will be sufficient that we could do an outdoor performance at the McCurdy. That may be the first gathering at Centrum since March of 2020. And I'll take questions on that at the end. I guess we're at the end. This is Diana Krall, one of our alums. Many people may know that Kenny G was a student at Centrum. Derek Kilmer was a student at Centrum. Our touch points for the last 48 years have been pretty extensive. And what we love at Centrum, in closing, is that we don't care about celebrity. It's wonderful that some of our students have gone on to these massive global careers or positions in Washington, DC. We love that. But what we also love is the student that wants to get better and has no desire to be a professional in either the music world or the visual arts world or the writing world. They just want to invest in themselves. So part of the vision at Centrum is that anyone from anywhere can come and nurture their creativity in an environment that's supportive, uplifting, and safe. That's what we do at Centrum. And the idea that all of our programs are multi-generational brings sort of the intangible benefit of this organization into reality. So we talk about growing greater civility and inclusion through the arts. I'm convinced that that's actually the bigger work that Centrum does. We're building civility and inclusion through the arts. And we may teach guitar or voice or painting, but the fact that you sit in classes and you spend time with people from age 4 to 98 has a value all its own, which may be much bigger than anything that's creative. And that's part of what motivates all of us. And I'd be very happy to take any questions about any of that. And thank you for listening.
Oh, Rob, that is fascinating. So all of you who are here listening, I see questions from Jay. So Jay, why don't you chime in and talk to Rob about that?
Sure. I have two questions. One, what is the relationship of Centrum with the Olympic Music Festival?
Excellent question. So that's an interesting history. We love the Olympic Music Festival, first of all. So a number of years ago, they were asked to find a new home down. They were based in Quilcene, as you know, and had a wonderful venue down there. The head of the music festival reached out to me because I have attended the music festival ever since I moved here. And I asked him over lunch if he'd ever been to Fort Worden State Park, and he had never been here before. So as you may remember, Jay, we started an actual formal partnership with the OMF. I forget what year that was, probably 2015. And the festival started producing events at the Wheeler Theater. As they continued to grow and they moved their offices to Port Townsend, that relationship transferred directly to the PDA. And so they became a community user of Fort Worden, and we're not necessarily riding under the parentship of Centrum, but we love the Olympic Music Festival. We are independent of them. And I was a strong believer back then that the addition of OMF into the suite of programs at Centrum was not competition for our chamber music program. I was convinced that it would only grow interest in chamber music, and that's exactly what happened. Some of the donors that supported our chamber music program were concerned that their presence would minimize Centrum's chamber music presence, but in fact, it was the opposite. We've both had strong audiences and strong artistic quality, and we believe that we can coexist in a friendly partnership as we do today. I also, Jay, made an effort to try to acquire that property in Quilcene, and I failed in that effort, but I thought it would be incredible if Centrum could have a satellite campus at that facility. And in truth, Alan Glitzen was a friend of mine, and I spent a lot of time with Alan, and we had the property appraised. The risks down there were too significant for my board at the time. If the ownership had changed hands, it would have triggered many code issues and literally the building of a new road and some other fairly expensive projects. Right. But we went really far down the road into seeing whether we could make that a satellite campus for Centrum. But in the end of the day, we voted not to do that.
Okay.
And then just lastly, all that Tarboo Ridge gun range stuff came up. So in retrospect, I was grateful that we didn't make that investment because it might have been very complicated. I've stayed in touch with Alan's wife, and that shooting range was pretty close to the OMF site and had the potential to really dampen the experience down there.
Yeah. And then the second question has to do with the relationship with the high schools in the area, and also the Port Townsend Symphony has started a young artist program. And I was wondering if you'd be up for some kind of a relationship with that.
Yeah, so that's a good question. We have a great relationship with Blue Heron Middle School. We do a program every year with Blue Heron, and we work with the string teacher in the school system quite a lot. The one thing that we try to be disciplined about is that what we do at Centrum are week-long workshops rather than daily or weekly classes. That's not our strength, and our faculty largely come from all parts of the country rather than local. So we try to be careful and disciplined about knowing what we do and what we don't do. But in terms of the Symphony Young Artist Project or the high school music programs, we could easily integrate and partner in creative ways when there are weeks where we have the faculty here. So the most frequent interaction we've had with the school system is through our chamber music program and our writing programs. We do a Writers in the Schools program, which has been going on for 15 years or so. And we send our chamber music visiting artists into the school systems often because there's such a strong string program in our community. But we'd be open to talking about the Young Artist program at the Symphony. The touch points for us would be fairly occasional during a year. You know, it's not every week. But for instance, just a quick aside, we brought the Kronos Quartet here a few years ago. And the Kronos Quartet came a few days early and worked in the school system with our local string players. And after their visit, one of the members of the quartet identified a local student that he wanted to follow for the rest of his career. So we were able to put those two in touch permanently. And I don't know how that's developed in the last 2 or 3 years, but we do programs like that, Jay, when it's possible.
Yeah, I remember when the Kronos Quartet was here, that, you know, we still talk about it.
Oh, good.
So are there any other questions that aren't in the chat? Just raise your hand and wave and we'll answer them. And hi, Ruby.
Everyone, hi, Rob.
Hi,
Nice to
Ruby.
hear from you. Always, you're just such a visionary. It's like it's amazing to have you in our community. I feel like
Thank you.
the scope of your vision is it's a beautiful thing. Thank you. I just wanted to pipe up for KPTZ when you were sharing the map. We are actually going to be tenants of the building, the number 3.
Ruby, we're losing your audio.
Oh, okay. Oh,
That-
sorry.
That's
Here.
better.
Right, here we go. Let me. How about now? Can you hear me now?
Uh-huh.
I just wanted to just pipe up and say that KPTZ will be in Makers Square starting at the end of this year. That's all.
We love that. And as Ruby knows, we're hoping that we can share space with KPTZ in the future, but that's part of our ongoing discussions here at the Fort. But we love the idea of the radio station being centered at Fort Worden State Park.
As do we. And we're glad to be in partnership with Centrum and all of the amazing partners out there. It's just such a rich tapestry of interests and people. So thank you.
Other questions? I'm going to throw one in from Facebook. It's about the high school writers workshop, Rob. And they want to know how their kids can get involved, especially, and these are from Port Townsend.
Yeah. We do quite a lot of scholarship programs. I should have mentioned this. We do over $150,000 in scholarships every year for students all over. But we do a lot of focus in Jefferson County for this work. We do a little bit in Kitsap County and Pierce County as well through grant programs that we're involved in, but we do a lot of local scholarships. So in terms of the high school writers program, which runs simultaneously with our adult writers conference in July, the best way for people to find out more about that is to reach out to George Marie. She's the head of our writing programs at Centrum, and her email is gmarie, M-A-R-I-E, @centrum.org. Honestly, we're always looking for more high school students who can come through the writing programs. So anybody that's interested, I would strongly encourage to reach out to George Marie. I should also mention that it's been our longstanding policy at all of our events that anybody 18 or under comes for free. So that's ticketed concert events mainly. So events at the Wheeler Theater and the McCurdy Pavilion. Anybody 18 and younger can attend those public ticketed events for free. And then, of course, we do a series of Free Friday concerts, mostly in the summer. We may return to some of those this year if we're able, but we love to do events where anybody can walk through the gates of the fort and experience music and art collectively with everybody that's here.
Fabulous.
I see also that Emily's on the call. Emily, you might want to say something about the Olympic Music Festival.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Emily Baker. I'm the managing director of the Olympic Music Festival. And Rob, you did a great summary of where we were at in 2015, reaching out to Centrum for help when we found out that Alan Eglitzen was ready to fully retire, including retiring his property. And yeah, we wouldn't be here without Centrum. And we're glad to be here, and we love Centrum. And yeah, so that's all I'll say, because I think you did a great job of just giving the summary. And I do have some questions that I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to Makers Square and when the PDA or the fort is going to be looking for new partners, or if that's something that's happening for other arts organizations that might be in Port Townsend.
Here's what I'm hearing. Maker Square technically is leased to the Fort Worden Foundation. There are lots of reasons for that. They mostly have to do with regulating tax credits. I won't bore you with those details, but the Fort Worden Foundation is the leaseholder for the 3 buildings that have been renovated. I have been told by the president of the foundation that they intend to issue an RFP, a request for proposals, in the next 60 days to invite tenants who would be interested in locating at Fort Worden to make a proposal to come here and be part of the campus environment. The Fort Worden current partners intend to also discuss the possibility of including Maker Square in our future vision, because we think that we already have all of the feeder dough essentially to animate the park in the way that the Maker Square was always envisioned to be. But everybody's excited by the possibility of having other tenants at the park as well, if it's a viable solution and if it fits with the lifelong learning mission and mandate that the city has created for the fort. So I think that the foundation will be putting an RFP out into the world in the next 60 days. I would assume that'll be covered in the leader. It's not something Centrum is controlling or involved in, but I'll be happy to share information as I learn it if you want to reach out to me in a month or 2.
Thank you. I also just wanted to ask, we're probably, a lot of us are in the same boat of planning events, and if you just wanted to talk a little more about the decision to hold off on live performances, I think we could all benefit from hearing the approach and how your audiences react to that and how it's been received.
Yeah, great question. We feel that the #1 criteria to return to public events is public confidence. And we have to be thoughtful about the fact that our artists largely have to fly here if they come to visit Centrum. And our participants, of course, do the same largely. They're mainly from out of town. But that aside, we could do local concerts anytime, like we do for Free Fridays. But the question is, will the public feel comfortable gathering in large groups? So that's the metric that is the most important to us. Our experiment in July for jazz and blues as outdoor events, I think will be very successful. We're going to have a limited number of tickets for those based on presumably 6-foot distancing among people. What we plan to do, Emily, is to literally lay out a grid at the Littlefield Green. And if you come for the show, you can pick a grid and be in that grid, but it'll be socially distanced by design. We're also investing in some air purification systems that we can use at the Wheeler and in some of the classroom settings. These will be mobile devices that we can move from space to space. They're made by a company called Aeroside, and we're looking at the XL model, which is an industrial size air purification system that appears to us to be successful in combating viruses, including COVID. We haven't purchased those yet. We thought we would be doing hybrid programming this summer when we created our budget for this year, but right now we're only considering the Ukulele Festival as the first event that we would consider doing in person, which is in September. You guys are all aware of the variants that are growing around the world, and we're concerned that we're not quite there yet. So we're sort of, we've reluctantly agreed that we need to make it through another year, basically online.
Thank you. That's exactly where we're at, and we'll probably be taking notes on your July concert for our hopeful August in-person concert.
Great.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. So Rob, I'm going to ask one more question, the last one from our Facebook, and I have a feeling that a lot of other people want to know this too. And the answer to the first part of this question, I think you've already given, but the second, maybe you can answer. And they asked if the gala was live this year, and if not, or if it is, when is it? And could you give us a hint about your theme?
So the gala is in October. It's going to be around the week of the 29th. I forget the exact date, but it's that Saturday near the end of October, very near Halloween, in fact. We don't have a theme yet for the auction this year. However, we're considering this fall doing more of a telethon than an auction. We will still probably have a number of auction items, but we're contemplating a telethon format, much like the Jerry Lewis telethon concept, where we can feature a variety of our artists with vignettes interspersed with select fundraising opportunities or paddle raises that you commonly see at these events. We're actually talking with some television stations in Seattle about the potential to host this event at a professional television studio. My preference personally is to keep it at Fort Worden and to do it at the Commons, which we have on reserve, and to use our broadcasting equipment to produce the telethon right from here. But we're literally in meetings this week and next, figuring all of this out. The gala is a kind of an important social event in Port Townsend. We normally get about 300 people in the room for that event. It's been modeled by many organizations on this call and elsewhere in the community. And it's wonderful to see the success that we all share in that kind of a function. So I'm sorry, I don't have more to say, Arlene. We haven't set a theme yet. We were really excited last year to have Diana Krall. We tried to do an event on YouTube Live with an auctioneer in Los Angeles and pre-recorded segments with Diana, and we pulled it off. And we had a record gala last year, but it was very, very complicated. So this idea of a telethon is where we're leaning for this fall. And for many years, what we've wanted to do is to do more of an actual gala and less of an auction. The auctions are really tiresome and very time consuming. And given the work that we do at Centrum, we think we could have a really elegant entertainment gala atmosphere, maybe at the McCurdy Pavilion one day, where you have a wonderful high level experience artistically, and then maybe a dinner afterwards with a paddle raise. We're just reluctant to change the formula too quickly because it's really been successful for us.
That is great information, and I know people are going to wait for an update, and so we'll call you back and have you chime in on that. Thank you for this. Thank you for joining us today and for all of the information and truly helping us revitalize the community as well as feeding our souls. Thank you for all you do. We have some chamber news and an opportunity for some of you to pitch, so I'll run through it really fast. The next Chamber Cafe is May 7th, and our presenter is Marcia Massey, who is the Executive Director of Optic, the Olympic Peninsula Tourism Commission, and we are a partner in that. We are going to be talking about tourism 2021 and beyond. And don't miss that because it's really about economic development. And then on May 21st, continuing that theme, Richard Tucker, thank you, Richard, the Executive Director of the Land Trust, is here with us today, of course, and will be presenting the benefits of conservation to the local economy. The Jefferson Land Trust, in partnership with the North Olympic Land Trust and the Trust for Public Land, commissioned an economic benefit study of their collective work, and he's going to present the findings and discuss the relevance. And economic development is primary in all of our minds right now, so that's a great start. I wanted to share that beginning on Monday, the Chamber, in conjunction with the Department of Emergency Management, has sort of a follow-up program to Jeffco Cares starting Safer and Healthy Together. And it is really a program saying, hey, even though you're fully vaccinated, you still need to mask up, you still need to socially distance. And it's to help all those people and all those business owners and shop owners who signed up for Jeffco Cares kind of keep that message going as tourism ramps and more people come to business. And we're excited about that. And now we have a few more minutes to have any of you who have something exciting going on at your business or your organization next month, or a chamber if you're starting one. And raise your little hand and go ahead and give us a minute of shout out about that. Nothing exciting? Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
We do have something exciting at OMF. We're actually launching our spring newsletter today, furiously editing and hoping it goes out today. But we're going to be announcing our a spring concert series. We were able to safely bring out a trio to record in March, and the recordings are now in post-production. So dates and times are still to be determined, but we'll be having, we had Tessa Lark on violin. She is a Grammy nominated violinist, has done a lot with the Olympic Music Festival. She typically comes out with our group musicians from Garden Music. And then we had cellist Alice Yu, who is the co-founder of the Denver Chamber Music Festival. And then, of course, Julio Elizalde, who is our artistic director and also pianist. And we were able to move a 9-foot grand piano into a very generous board member's house to do the recordings. So that's what we did last year for our virtual season. And this is a first for OMF to have a spring concert. So we're very excited. So you can go to our website, sign up to be on our mailing list, and everything will be posted there for free in May.
And Richard, do you still have your hand up?
I do. I just wanted
All
to thank Rob, because when I came here to Port Townsend 6 years ago, Rob was the first executive director to reach out to me and welcome me to the community. And he's been a valued partner, and I'm just always been appreciative of that.
Thank you, Richard.
Candace, do you want to share the new exciting news about what's happening at First Security?
I would. I was waiting for my turn. We are hosting a Bazing event. We are launching new products at First Security, and we are really excited to incorporate our local businesses to kind of bring more of our local customers to them. So we have 4 sessions. We're going to have virtual Zoom calls, and we can get more information out to you. But it's pretty much, Bazing is a program where people can download it and you offer them $5 off their purchase or 10% off, or, you know, something to intrigue them to come in. We're excited about it because it not only promotes local shopping, but it promotes, you know, the growth of our community. And so we're hoping that we can kind of strengthen those bonds between our community and banks and all of our customers in Port Townsend. So
That is awesome. Thank you, Candace. Aislinn, last question, last pitch. Go ahead.
Thanks, Rob. That was a really great presentation. And obviously, I enjoy working with you. You're a great partner. Just want to say from the PDA perspective, like Rob mentioned, I've been working on the hospitality solution, and we will have some hopefully pretty exciting announcements on that at the next PDA board meeting. We do have 2 institutions that have stepped up with the transition funding that we have been seeking. So I can't make a formal announcement, but just since this is friends here, wanted to say that we are moving, and it's been a lot of hard months of work, but we're about to kind of come through on this. So that's all.
Great.
Good to know.
Arlene, may
Hi,
I,
Judith.
if we have a minute?
Absolutely.
I just want to let everyone know that Songwriting Works, although we've gone sort of underground, as so many of us have gone off the regular social grid during this past year, we are still working. Primarily, the project right now is developing a whole university curriculum with professors of music and conservatory of professors of the School of Medicine and a Conservatory of Music at the University of Cincinnati. We're training their students as well as faculty and creating a model that can be brought back locally as well as other places. Because as you probably might remember, our songwriters come from all over the country who have been involved. So it's gone national in that kind of a way, but the main thing locally to think about for the future is Songwriting Works now also has the Myth Singer Legacy Project of Daniel Deerdorf's work, his music, his artwork, his myth storytelling, and teaching under our umbrella, and are looking towards something that we've planted a tiny seed about, of having some kind of myth festival or something like that in the future take form. And Martin Shaw, who's now one of the internationally known English language myth tellers and professors, who is now my own professor as I'm getting a master's degree in poetics and myth. He is interested very much in having a relationship with Port Townsend, as he began with Daniel, and coming back to our community in some way. So just watering that seed a little bit more, and we'll see how it continues to develop.
That's so fabulous, Judith. Thank you for sharing that. Rob, thank you again from all of us and for everything that you do. You are missed here at the Chamber. Thank you all for joining us today, and we wish you a great weekend with this fabulous weather. I'll probably see some of you on the trails at Fort Worden this weekend. And we look forward to having you join us at next month's Chamber Cafes. Stay safe, stay healthy, and most of all, shop local. Bye, you guys. Have a great week.